The 15-Point Plan is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network.
Welcome to the 15-Point Plan podcast. Chad Himes here, joined by the calming Jillene Snell. Jillene, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Chad?
I am fantastic. It's going to be a fun episode today. We are not in the studio as we normally are, sitting across from each other where I can throw things at you. So we'll just hope that we can keep things moving in a smooth direction today. And that's because, why, Jillene? Why are we not in the studio, just you and I talking? What do we got going on today?
Yeah, well, we actually get to be connected with a mindfulness coach. And speaking of calm, from my experience so far, she's a very calm individual, and she is a guest on our podcast. We're in different locations, so we're coming together by audio today. We get to see each other, but we get to, you all get to hear us together. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of that mindfulness conversation, Chad, that we wanted to dig into just a little bit more because, well, one, I think all of us could use a life that both has more energy and less stress. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. That's what the 15-Point Plan is here for. Help you with your energy, help you release the stress, help you be happier and healthier. And in our last episode, we heard from Ryan. Ryan went on a meditation retreat, shared some of the takeaways from that. Ryan also shared with us some meditation stuff because he's the guy who's been doing it for a long, long time. We're going to someone today who's going to maybe change our mindset a little bit about mindfulness because many of us do think it means meditation. Before we get any farther and get into that though, Jillene, I want to bring our guest on to join us today. She calls herself a teacher. And I'm not going to read some crappy bio that somebody wrote somewhere once. Tammy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Welcome to the 15-Point Plan. Introduce yourself to our audience and tell them who the heck you are.
Hi, Chad. Hi, Jillene. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. So, yes, my name's Tammy Bux. From the accent, you can probably tell I'm an Aussie, born
you have
and
an
bred.
Accent? That must have not been, I didn't know that.
I think we love the accent.
Thank you. Yes, born and bred, Perth, Western Australia. And I couldn't be further from home right now. I'm in Vancouver in Washington State, beautiful part of the world. And I'm a certified yoga teacher. I'm a breathwork and meditation guide. I call myself a wellness mentor and a teacher. And I'm actually a TEDx speaker as well. I wear many hats. I'm a travel advisor for a travel based in New York. And my last corporate job before moving to the US was director of strategy and planning at a very large university in Australia that had like $1 billion revenue. So I've seen the corporate side of things, and I'm taking a completely different direction, having come to a new country and in a different phase of my life. I'm, turning 54 this year, so taking things a little differently. And so what I've done is created a program called Radiance Wellbeing, and this is where we have tools and techniques to help us develop resilience and calm in stressful times, which we know can get us down and sap our energy and deplete us. And so these are the tools that I use, and mindfulness is one very important part of that.
Okay, so before we get into this, some questions, and I know Jillene and I figured out some questions we definitely wanted to ask you to make the most of our time with you. I want to ask this question. What was the catalyst for change in your world? Here you are corporate, here you are running this massive, in the corporate side of it, we know the stresses that come with all of that stuff. Not only do you move countries, right? You go through a complete shift here where you're now saying, hey, I went from the corporate stuff. Now I'm into this mindfulness stuff. I'm a teacher. I'm a yoga. Forget moving. What just caused the mental shift from one to the other?
So my husband has been working in the Silicon Valley for about 30 years. And when we first met, we were trying to, I was getting the green card and he was applying for Australian immigration. So we were remote for a short amount of time. And while I was waiting to finally get my green card, I was at work one day and I got a call saying, your husband is in emergency. He's just had been diagnosed with this life-threatening infection, which can go into his bloodstream. He's sitting in, San Jose. I'm in Perth, and I just suddenly have to drop everything at work and get on the next plane and come across over here to make sure he's okay. And what was worse was that he had congestive heart failure and arrhythmia. So there were these multiple problems, which, thank goodness, the wonders of modern medical science, they caught it early enough. They pumped him with antibiotics and got his heart beating correctly. And by the time I came, he was out of ICU and into like a regular step down unit. And that just made me change a lot of my thinking. And I told my boss, and luckily I was at a university, I took like a sabbatical, and I said, okay, I'll be in America and I'll help him get better, because it was a long road to recovery. I knew that. And one thing dawned on me, that if I don't take care of myself and my own needs, I will not have enough reserves to take care of him. And so I enrolled in a course at the Stanford University. It wasn't too far away for me to get there. Once a week, I would go there and learn about compassion studies. And it was the first time that I really understood what mindfulness meant, about coming into the present moment and allowing things to be as they are. Notice them as they are. Be aware of what's happening in your mind and your body and your emotions, and do not judge, do not criticize, do not make a story about it. Just sit with it and let it be there. And the act of noticing actually takes you out of the action and into observer mode, and that helps to calm the nervous system. And if you do it consecutively over time, you'll gain that resilience and that bounce back. And so when he was better and I was, I got my green card and everything, then, I came over here, and I didn't want to get into corporate, and I kept on studying and learning about these things. And now, after being here, I think more than 3 years, I'm teaching and really happy with that change in career.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your story with us. It sounds like the first bit of practice that you had with mindfulness was with your own journey and your own situation with your husband's health and this big move and a lot of life impactful changes that were happening, right, for you and your husband. Did that make you want more? And what did that look like for you? Like, tell us a little bit more about your experience there and how you continue to develop your experience in this field.
I did become like a like a mindfulness junkie. Everything I could read and study and research about it and take courses, it became my absolute passion, because I saw how much difference it made in my life. And the interesting thing is, once you learn to calm your own nervous system, it has such a huge mirror effect on the people around you. When I regulate my nervous system, I come into present moment awareness. I'm aware that I'm not the thoughts that I'm thinking. Those thoughts are just things in my mind. It's not me. I become an observer. And when I become an observer, I don't get caught up in the story. I don't get caught up in past regrets or future anxiety. I'm here right now, taking one breath at a time, taking one step at a time. And that allows a signal to go from the tissues of your body into the brain and release those chemicals that allow you to dampen down those stress hormones like cortisol, dampen down that adrenaline, and takes you out of that fight, flight, and freeze into the rest and digest. There's many mindfulness practices, but at the core of mindfulness is this awareness without judgment of the present moment. And so there's many, many ways that you can come into mindful awareness. It can be through yoga. One of my favorites right now is Qigong, which is like a Tai Chi. It's an ancient Chinese mindful movement practice, very calming, very stabilizing to the emotions, breath work. The list could go on. So yes, it's my absolute passion in life right now.
Okay, so you've become obsessed with it, is what we understand. And I want to ask a few quick. Did you notice, Jillene, as Tammy was talking, an audience, you might have caught this as well. At one point, she was talking really, 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 and then she brought herself, and I just felt myself
Hmm.
just relax over here as she did it. And we can see each other while we record. We don't obviously post the video of this. I don't know if you even do it. I don't know if it was on purpose. I don't know if it was a trigger. I'm going to ask you about it here, Tammy. You kept bringing your hands to center while you were doing that. Is that a nervous tick that I'm just calling you out on, or is that like some purposeful movement that you're doing that our audience can maybe learn a little bit about and adapt into their worlds?
Maybe a bit of both. I really talk with my hands a lot, but I find it's a natural movement for me to bring my hands to center while I'm doing this. And it could be hands together, but this is also nice, this north and south. I don't know if you
She's
can
got one
see.
hand. For those of you who can't see, she's got one hand stacked on top of the other hand, like she's making a straight line between them, right at her
Yeah.
center spot.
So the fingers are pointing north and south, and the meeting place is the heart center. That's a beautiful practice I've learned from my Qigong teacher, where, some of you've heard about body language and the power posing from Amy Cuddy. Well, these hand movements, the body movements, the posture, they all signal from the body to the brain, to the nervous system, how the body, the mind, and the emotions are exchanging information. And so sometimes when we do a pose, putting our fingers together at heart center, palms together, it's very calming and very soothing to the body, to the nervous system. There is such a huge mind, body, emotion connection that we may have forgotten in the rush of our Western kind of go getting out there, successful, do, instead of just coming back to be, taking the time to just be in the moment who we are.
There she
And
did. She did it again. You hear the slowdown in the voice and the comment? It's just making me just
It
calm.
works.
It does.
Yeah. Lead us into, Tammy, a little bit about breath work. We've been diving into that into the podcast, and you talked a little bit about some other tactics. Talk to us about breath work. What are the benefits, and what are some simple exercises that we might be able to do and incorporate daily that are sustainable?
yeah, so when I found out about the power of breath, I was amazed. Like, I grew up in Australia, typical, very similar to here in the US. You kind of, it was like I was young in the 70s and 80s. We were doing aerobics and all of that kind of stuff, Jane Fonda and whatever, Richard Simmons. And we didn't know about these ancient Eastern practices. And if you look at um, ancient Indian and Chinese practices are the ones that I've been studying. Breath means life, and breath allows us to soak in and expand that life force energy, or it can deplete us and really bring us, shallow breathing makes us very nervous if we breathe like up into the chest. What we want to do is bring deep breath in through the nose, down into the belly, allow the belly to expand, move that diaphragm down, and then expel all the air out through the nose again. That's the yogic breath that we do. And again, that diaphragmatic breathing, there's something called the vagus nerve, and it's at the brain stem. And I don't know if you've spoken about it. It's a nerve that goes from the cranium and wanders through every organ of the body down to the gut. When we do that abdominal breathing, it sends a signal back to the brain that, okay, everything's all right. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's no bear coming out of the woods that we need to run from and get all our adrenaline going and the nervous system going into overload. So for me, breath is medicine, and it is a perfect way to modulate your emotions and your stress if you practice it on a regular basis. One particular practice that has been very popular with my students, and actually it's something that's been used by athletes, Navy SEALs, nurses, policemen, even returned veterans who have PTSD. It's called box breathing. And with box breathing, it's like a square. And so you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4 while your breath is in, you breathe out for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4 while your breath is out. And I normally suggest breathing in and out through the nose. So I can do a demonstration. The thing is, when you're breathing and you're talking, I can talk through it. And let's see how we go. What do you think?
Well, I think that you don't need to necessarily do a demonstration of box breathing. I think you've explained it quite well. Ryan actually talked about it also on our last episode. I'm sitting here doing it while you're talking. I got to tell you, the only part of the box that gets me is that last 4.
Yeah.
Right? The hold before you bring it back in air is the challenge for me when it comes to it. I know Jillene's got a lot of research on breathing that we're going to be covering on a standalone episode as well.
What would be some maybe triggers in our day where it might be a signal or a sign that we can take a moment and use some of these breathing techniques?
Yeah. So sometimes what we're thinking of when we think of stress triggers is that, for me, my tummy, I get like butterflies in my tummy. I can they're doing something's doing somersaults in my stomach. You can get a little sweaty on the palms. Your body can tell you a lot. So your body is your best friend. If you start to recognize those signs, say you had a very bad interaction with a coworker, maybe your face gets flushed and hot, and you've got these little thoughts, nasty thoughts going in your head that, like in a cartoon, and there's that little bubble with like XYZ going on. And you'll find a lot of physiological changes. You might get a little sweaty under the armpits. You might start to feel a little shaky sometimes. And it can often be, or maybe your kids have done something that you're really upset about, or someone cut you off in driving, and there'll be signs, really big, like warning, if you learn to read your body, if you learn to read
That's
of
good.
how
I would
your
say mine
breath
happens in
begins.
my stomach. I always feel it in my stomach. I can always tell if I'm stressed based on how my stomach is feeling. What about you, Chad?
Mine's
Do you
my
have an
jaw.
indicator?
Yeah, I hold it in my jaw. That's where my stress comes. And that's because usually I shoot my mouth off and have there's no thought bubble with Chad. Right? If you know me, folks, you've been listening to the podcast long enough, there's no thought bubble. It just comes out of my mouth. So when I need to hold it back, I feel that tension really come in my jaw, knowing that I need to do it. I'll tell you another time I do it. It's not a trigger of there's stress and I need to relax. I do it before I eat a meal because I know I eat less when I'm calm. I'm not just shoveling it in because it's filling a void. So if you want to trigger, audience, and you want to practice this box breathing and you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't know all those triggers yet that Tammy's talking about. One, guess what? We got another episode on breathing alone coming for you. And 2, I would challenge you, just practice it before breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When you sit down, take 30 seconds, do or a minute or whatever, and do some box breathing or whatever breathing exercise you do. Calm yourself before you dive into a food plate and then devour stuff you didn't really need to. Tammy, you mentioned...
I know it.
Go ahead, Jillene.
What Ryan on the podcast, our last week's podcast, talked about how when he works out, he gets very, very energized, almost to the point that he's not calm. And so he actually uses these breathing techniques to calm himself after a workout. So that could be for some of us as well.
Absolutely.
But I think it's awareness on where we can kind of plug into that, because I don't have breathing incorporated into like a habit or a ritual, but I know I can incorporate it into certain moments where it can really sort of change my day around. So I just love your comments on that. Thank you.
All right. So, Tammy, you mentioned earlier in the conversation yoga. I heard yoga. You're a yoga instructor. I know yoga's good, right? I know it in my head. Yoga, good, right? Touching my toes is a challenge, though, right? I might be athletic. I might be a guy I'm not super flexible. And yoga to me is one of those things that always frustrates me. 90% of the poses I seem to be facing downward, and I'm attempting to look at my instructor. So it's like really confusing to be relaxed in downward dog while looking to see what you're doing. Okay, talk to our audience, because I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that 95% of our audience doesn't do yoga. And I'm going to guess that 100% of our audience probably should be doing yoga in some form because of the benefits that come from it. Take a moment, talk to us about yoga with mindfulness and how we should be incorporating it, and how some of us that don't do it at all maybe could start and become better at it.
Yeah, and I love that question because people think that yoga means you have to be bendy like a pretzel or whatever. So I mentioned to you, I'm turning 54. What I could do at the age of 20 or 30, I cannot do now. I have some instructors who are like 60 plus who are beautifully flexible, but everybody is different, right? And you have different phases in your life. And so for me, I want yoga to be accessible to everybody. And what I suggest is that yoga is not about doing these weird, crazy poses. It's actually getting into harmony. Yoga means union. And so it's the union of the body, the mind, and the spirit. And the exercises are only meant to make your body supple, your mind open enough to get into the final rest and meditation pose called corpse pose, Shavasana. And so all of that swirling and whirling and doing all things is a lead up to the actual pinnacle of the class, which is Shavasana, which is corpse. And all you do is, and you can just do that yourself. You don't need to bend or do anything. You can lay flat on the ground. Just let your whole body melt and relax into the earth. Feel the weight of your hips, your thighs, your legs, your back, your head, just being held by that gravity of the earth underneath you. Make your arms go out, palms up, feet just fall to the side, and just lay there for a few moments and breathe. You may want to put your hands on your belly and feel your breath coming in and out of your stomach. You may want to put your hands on your chest and feel your heartbeat. And that's yoga. Yoga is not just one type of thing. We have a tradition like the restorative yoga tradition, where you can use props to gently release tension in the body. One thing I tell students is you can put your legs up the wall, lie down flat on the ground, shimmy your backside up to the wall, and then push your feet up so that your legs are perpendicular to your body. So you're making like a right angle with your body. And you can put your legs up the wall, and it's really, really beneficial because you've got all that blood draining the opposite direction up to your heart, and your heart not having to pump so much. It's very nourishing for the lymph system, gets everything flowing. If you don't want to put your legs up the wall, you can actually put your legs up on a chair or a sofa. So again, you're lying flat on the ground and you just shimmy your backside up to a chair or the sofa, and your legs are at a right angle at the knee. And that is even very, very beneficial. You know, in the morning, you can get up, stretch high up to the sky, look up to the sky, bend sideways, get that life force energy, breathe in. These types of stretches, these types of restorative poses, they're very beneficial because what we're trying to do is we're trying to affect the nervous system. We're not trying to stretch out our muscles and what have you. We're actually trying to bring a sense of aliveness into the connective tissue of the body, some aliveness into the lymph system, and allow for that flow to happen. And so when the energy is flowing, you feel enlivened and you feel lighter, and you can move gracefully throughout the day, or have a beautiful night's sleep if you do that before you sleep.
Okay, I guess I'm a yoga expert because I do some of that. Awesome.
Yay,
Yay, look at me.
perfect.
Now I can tell
That-
people I do yoga. All right. Jillene?
well, I was just going to say that's a great perspective on yoga because for me, I always think I've got to, plug into a YouTube video or go to a studio to actually get some of those yoga pieces integrated into my life. So thank you for sharing some of those simple tactics with us that we can do, maybe even in our office, right? During the workday or in our cars or whatever it might be, wherever we are. A lot of the things that you're sharing today are so sustainable in our everyday routines. I wanted to ask you and shift a little bit to another potential tactic of mindfulness, which is in relationship to journaling. How would journaling impact our world of mindfulness?
So I kind of think of journaling and self-reflection as going hand in hand. So the way that I teach in my program is to say self-reflection is a really important key tool in managing stress and emotional unrest. And so mindfulness is the piece where when you become aware, the moment you become aware of what your emotions and your mind are doing, you're halfway there already. Because being mindless or ignoring and just zoning out is not a way to combat those incessant thoughts that keep on racking your brain and don't give you any rest. And so what I suggest to people is day to day, week to week, just check in with in your journal you can write, how am I feeling in my body, in my mind, in my emotions right now? What is actually happening? Just take a few moments to sit there and say, okay, today my body's feeling different in this place or that place. How's my energy level? What are the thoughts that are going on in my mind? Is my emotional, you know, um, thermometer one way or the other? Note that down, and then from day to day, week to week, notice how that changes. And when we become aware of what's going on and we start to notice the patterns that come up, what the triggers are, we can find ways to soothe them as well. So it all works in conjunction. Um, the movement, the breath work, and the meditation and the mindfulness piece will start to help you actually become aware and name those things that are happening in your body and your mind. And then you can write them down. And you can then reflect back on, well, what triggered me there? What happened there? Why am I feeling differently? And so that's how, for me, I use it myself and with my students on a weekly basis or a daily basis.
That's great. You've shared quite a few suggestions here in relationship to mindfulness, like being present in the moment, using some of our the kinesthetic aspects of our hands and bodies movements, yoga, journaling. I probably missed something, breath work. Now, when we tie all this together, Tammy, tell us, like, when you're coaching someone, how do you see their life start to change in relationship to their stress and their health when they start to incorporate some of these aspects?
I've got a couple of really wonderful success stories that I would love to share. So, one of my friends, she was learning yoga from me, and she loved the meditation part at the end when we were, lying down in that corpse pose, and I was just talking them through a body scan, say, just concentrating on your body, things like that. And she shared with me that her sister, all the way across the country, had been diagnosed with clinical depression, and she had been through therapy, and she was on and off meds, and she asked if I would help. And I got a bit scared. I have to admit, it was totally out of my comfort zone, thinking, who am I to think that I can help someone with depression? And I said, well, if I can alleviate a little bit, maybe, just something, that she has someone there connecting with her a couple of times a week. And I met with her twice a week for a year, the whole of last year. And she had her ups and downs, but she kept consistent with it. She consistently met me twice a week. She was doing the practices, very, very often during the week. And there was a point in time, I think it was like before Thanksgiving or something, she said to me, Tammy, in the beginning, I was a burden to my family because they were so worried about me not being able to work because of this condition that I have, not being able to go out. And she says, now I feel like I'm so much better. I'm so much more resilient. Those negative clouds have lifted. I'm so much more positive. I've learned so much that my family are coming to me as a support system. And I am offering them advice about how to breathe, how to meditate, how to move their bodies in order for them to overcome stress. And I thought, wow, that was just such a beautiful experience, that whole of last year that happened. And it was an exchange. It was an exchange of me offering the tools and that person really taking it so seriously to change their life. And I said to her, my goal often is to make myself redundant. I here as the teacher want to give you so much empowerment. I want to empower you with so many tools and techniques that you don't need me anymore because you have the power to heal yourself from within with these tools and techniques. If you want to still connect with me, that's another type of relationship. But the feeling of dependency or need should go away. That's my main aim, is to make sure that anyone who has an interaction with me over a certain period of time gets what they need and can do it themselves. And that makes me just so happy to serve in that way.
Love it. That's the way a teacher should be teaching, right? Not make you dependent upon me, make you independent by being able to give you so much that if you want me, I'm there, yet you no longer need me. Over your shoulder, Tammy, there's a sign we've been staring at this whole time. It says, peaceful mind, grateful heart, which is very interesting because gratitude will be the next subject that we dive into at the 15-point plan. And we are grateful for you taking the time today to give our audience some opportunities to become a little more mindful, folks, as you're working towards earning your full 15 points every single day. Tammy, if they wanted to learn more, if they wanted to connect with you after this episode, if they were like, I got to talk to this lady, I got to reach out to her, how do they go about connecting with you moving forward?
Okay, so the easiest way is to get in touch with me via email on my email address is Tammy, Tammy .bux, that's BUX for X-ray, at Fora Travel, FORA.travel. That's a direct link. And then on my Instagram, it's Radiance Wellbeing with Tammy. So that's TAMMY. That's on Instagram. And I have some free guided meditation videos, which I absolutely love because I filmed them here in my garden at springtime with all the blossoms last year. There's everything glowing, this Pacific Northwest garden that I have. And that's on breathetogetheryoga.com. And so you can find I have lots of free tools and meditations that you can look at with the
Excellent.
yoga studio that I work with in.
All right. So email her or check her out on Instagram, follow her there, or go check out some of her guided meditations that she's put out there for you. If you want to connect with Jillene and I, you know how to do it. We are on Facebook. We're in the Facebook group for Win, Make, Give. Come join us there and have a conversation with us there, our parent podcast. Or, of course, we also have the group 15-Point Plan for Life. If you're looking for some accountability to achieve your 15 points, make sure you find that group on Facebook. Folks, as always, we hope today's episode ups your energy and takes you to the next level.